The projection is that we are going to need 75% more geriatricians in the next 5 years than what we currently have now, because a lot of them are going to be retiring and leaving. Geriatricians are doctors that specialize only in treating people 65 and older. So right when we have our aging population, okay, we're going to have fewer doctors that are going to be able to treat them that specialize just in what they are dealing with. Okay.
Hey y'all, welcome to the Texas Forward podcast. Today our guest is Brent Veazey, the co-owner of Assisted Living Locators in Houston, Texas, where he and his wife Pauline help vulnerable seniors navigate the complexities of Medicare and get access to care that they really need. He spent 15 plus years working in health insurance, both nonprofit and corporate worlds, including stints with Cigna and the YMCA of Houston. Your host, Brian Lee, dug into a variety of topics, including the shortage of doctors here in Texas, the current state of entitlement programs in Texas, and the importance of holding our elected officials accountable. We hope you enjoy, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Brent Veazey.
Veazey, whatever. Sounds good.
Brent Veazey is how you say your last name.
French. It's a curse.
French. My last name is Lee. Brian Lee here with the Texas Forward podcast. French as well.
Really?
Yeah. It's one of those things. I don't know how I feel about it, but I love the Lee family. I'm very proud of the Lee family.
I am proud of some aspects of our history. You know, I also like to make fun of some of my history too.
Yeah.
So the French have some, monotheist aspects to them as well. So things that they're well known for.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what when I say I'm not sure how I feel about it. That's kind of where I was going with it.
Yes.
But I will say this, Brent. So this is for anybody listening at home, we do these podcasts in bulk. So you are the third one today, and you were the first person who actually did not get lost coming to this location. So I want to give you a shout out for your sense of direction.
Like I said, we had a little inn because once upon a time we used to live not too far from here, so we generally knew where we were going.
Okay, so we'd have to be a little worried if you didn't know where you were going at this point. Gotcha. Well, very nice. So have you been a Texan your whole life then? Are you from here originally?
Yes, born in Tyler and have lived most of my life here. I did leave the state for a little while to work on my master's degree. I lived in Washington, D.C. metro area for 3.5 years, basically. So working on my master's degree.
And where did you get your master's?
George Washington University, the Elliott School of International Affairs. I have a master's in international politics, economics, and marketing.
Excellent. That's a very, you crammed a lot into that master's.
I did. Triple major for the most part.
Yeah.
Within the master's degree.
So that had to be all you were doing at that time. It's just.
No, actually, I did do some part-time work, making some money, and then went to work full-time as I was finishing. So I commuted. I got to ride a train out to get on a bus to go to work every day. So that was an experience that I had not done before because I did not have a vehicle in Washington, D.C. It's not recommended that you have a vehicle in D.C.
It's not a car city.
It is not. It has a lot of cars in it, but
easier to get around in the public transit.
It is. When you have public transportation, it does, and the metro system in D.C. is fantastic. It really is.
Yeah, and I've spent limited time in DC myself, but that's something that really would be great if Texas could ever get on board with these high-speed rails between Dallas, Houston, Austin, all the major cities like they keep talking about. And we're sorely lacking in Austin. Does Houston have any?
It has a light rail system, but it's more like, for lack of a better term, a trolley, really. Because it's like rails on the ground that they take up space from streets, roads to be able to do it. And it's fairly limited in and around downtown Houston for the most part, in and out, going different directions.
Yeah. That's Austin Austin as well. It's like they're very limited rail. But yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be nice if Texas could get their act together with that stuff.
It would. It really would, because mass transit is a very good thing, and they do it right in places like D.C., up north in New York City even.
Yeah.
The transit system is very impressive. And when you have that capability, it makes it a lot easier for you to save money by, the vehicle being far less prominent.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we were talking just before we started rolling, so you are father of 3.
That's right.
And you are, I saw on your LinkedIn profile, wanted to ask you about this. So you are involved you're the president of the high school, something with the band?
Band boosters.
The band
yes.
boosters. So what does that involve as a booster president? Is that basically just running the organization?
Running the organization, doing a lot of interaction with the community, for lack of a better term, herding cats.
Yeah.
A lot of times, because you have a lot of people that have very strong opinions on things, and you have to be able to listen, but at the same time be able to moderate.
Sure.
And there's a lot of interaction with the directors and the school leadership that's involved. And so I had lots of those opportunities as well. But it was very fulfilling to be able to be there and participate in doing the things that he liked and being there for him as part of that. It was a very great opportunity and great experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure. So that actually reminds me of something else we were talking about the other day. You've been in politics, or you've been interested in politics for a long time.
I have, yes.
And you mentioned you kind of pursued following in your grandfather's footsteps. So tell us about your grandfather.
So my grandfather was very much, he served in World War II. He fought in the Pacific in the Navy, and he did a great deal of, you name a major battle and he was there. He was actually one of the first, they called it frogmen back then, but that's the precursors for the Navy SEALs.
Oh, okay.
And he was in that program from the start. He was at Pearl Harbor 3 days after it happened. And
wow.
He was doing a lot of work there, trying to recover bodies and ships and everything else as a diver. But he was heavily involved in doing those types of things. Then he wanted to get into something a little bit more safe because it was a 50% mortality rate for frogmen. So he got into PT boats.
What are PT boats exactly?
So those are those motorized torpedo boats. It's basically a big, fast boat that has torpedoes on them that go and attack cruisers and battleships.
That doesn't sound much safer to me.
No, it's not. It really is not. So, but he did that for a little while, and one of his boats got blown up, and he was injured. He was injured 3 times, I think, during the war. And then ended up being first mate on a heavy cruiser that ended up being sunk. And then he spent a week in a life raft in the South China Sea.
Oh my God.
Around the Philippines. So it was quite an experience for him. But he was very much believing in service.
Yeah.
Because he went to war because he was fighting for democracy and our rights to be able to do what we do on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
And after the war, he went from the Navy going into the Army, and he was a drill sergeant in the Army. So he trained men getting ready to go into Korea. And then he ended up going into some other aspects of intelligence even after that. Service was a big deal, and he was very much promoting that as we grew up, my brother and I especially.
Yeah.
And it was very important for us. And when I got into high school especially, it was one of those things that is like, okay, how do I do my service? And that's when I was really thinking about the political aspect. So I started in the Republican Party.
You were in the college Republicans?
Eventually, when I went to college at University of Texas at Austin, I got into the college Republicans, but I started one of the first high school Republican clubs in Montgomery County, Texas.
Oh, cool.
When I was in high school. And from there, went into the college Republicans at UT, was at the 1992 convention in Houston on the floor of the convention and did a lot of things there, met a lot of people.
Now, at what point was this, the convention in 92? Was that when you were in college? Did you
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was a senior then.
Well, that's pretty cool.
And got to interact with George W. Bush, the Bush family, and it was a very fun experience.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. The Forward Party convention. Were you at the convention in Houston?
I was not. No,
Oh,
I missed that one.
Well, we'll have more hopefully.
Hopefully,
I expect we will.
Yes.
But that was the first political convention of any kind I'd been to, and
Really,
it was. Not anything like the RNC, but it was cool. It was a really, really neat experience, unique experience, and exciting. So I can't imagine with how many people go to those things for at the RNC.
I mean, a few thousand.
Yeah.
At each one.
And were you able to go because you were in the College Republicans, or what? How'd you get your ticket?
I did. I was in the College Republicans, but I was also involved with the state party as well because the College Republicans had a very close relationship with the senior party at that time. We were a very key part of their volunteer base, doing a lot of things for the state party, doing phone banks and things like that. We were like yard sign chair people for the entire state for like the Rick Perry Agriculture Commissioner campaign. That type of stuff.
Yeah.
That's how we were able to get onto the floor.
So you're a volunteer, you're heavily involved. That was just like
yes,
kind of a
very much believing in everything that they were talking about. Lesser government, big tent. Lee Atwater was a very big part of my belief system at that point. And the big tent that he was promoting for the party at the time, that was something that was meaningful to me and is still meaningful to me, which is one of the reasons why I had to leave the party.
Yeah. So when did that happen, and when did it start to kind of go south for you with the Republican Party?
For me, it started going south pretty much probably with Romney.
Yeah.
Because there were some things that I was like, okay, but I don't really agree with him on that. So, but it really came to a head, and obviously 2016 was it, and then I was just sitting there going, oh my God, her or him.
I think a lot of people had that thought.
So I had to go with, I ended up going with Gary Johnson.
Yeah.
That's how desperate, I was, because that was what I just could not do those other two. And that was where the break really happened officially.
So were you more of a libertarian in terms of the things that you liked about the traditional Republican Party? You mentioned small government, limited,
pretty much,
like that.
Yeah. But I have to say that I have evolved on that too, because as we get older, you see a lot of things. You get to experience life. And as you experience life, you start to see that, wow, there's a lot of people out there that aren't able to do what they want to do for various reasons, for living a best life. And when they aren't able to do that, then what does it look like for them? What does that life look like truly? And that's when it really dawned on me that, well, government's got to be more involved as, I guess, the backstop of final resort in order to be able to try to be there to try to help people when they really need that help and there's no other options available. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. I think I've had a similar evolution in my political journey in a way of, I like the idea of it's an idealistic philosophy of, a lot of conservatives, I think, or Republican types is meritocracy, right? You're rewarded for the hard work you put in.
Yes.
And if you put in hard work, you have the opportunity to succeed. And those are the people that we should reward, right? It's the idea of a meritocracy. But it's not that simple. Not even close.
Well, from my perspective, the merit is kind of like at a different level, because there's some people that work hard their entire lives, but they're only able to reach a certain level. So does that mean that their merit is less just because they only work hourly and are doing manual labor because they did that? And my whole thing is, no, that's not the case. But the meritocracy aspect is impactful on them because they've hit their ceiling.
Yeah.
And their ceiling still keeps them from being able to live the best life that everyone else is actually able to live. Then what? Especially as they get older, how does that look?
Absolutely. And I mean, the way I always think about that question at a very basic level is, and I think this something Andrew Yang talks about a lot too, is it's the idea of the American dream. It's somebody should be able to, if they work at HEB their whole career, climb up the ranks at HEB and live a comfortable life. And at the end of the day, not have to worry about, not have to worry about money to a level of like this fear of money, be able to live a comfortable life where they can have a family and a car and a place to live, right? Not be in debt their whole life. And
that's a good way of saying it, because for me, it's a matter of, I don't want to go out and define whose best life should be what.
Mm-hmm.
They should be able to define that. And if their best life is being happy doing HEB their whole life and that's what they want, great. If their best life is going and working outside all the time and doing manual labor, that's great.
Absolutely.
That's not the point of this. The point is, when we get to that level when you're not able to live because you can't pay for the basics, then what? And that's the conversation I think that we're missing out on a lot in this country now.
Yeah.
Is what happens after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the way you describe that. That's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right. What does that mean to you? It's different for everybody.
Exactly. And that's the part I think we lose a lot of is that pursuit of happiness aspect now. Life is about that. When I started out, I thought my pursuit of happiness was going to be going to Congress, working as a chief of staff, and then eventually running for public office that way. Yeah. It never came into my existence at that point that my pursuit of happiness would be raising 3 wonderful kids, meeting a fantastic woman, and living life that was that, and I would not change anything about what my pursuit of happiness ended up being. But it has to be different for everyone. And we shouldn't try to interfere with everyone trying to do that part of it.
100%. I mean, that is truly what this country's about.
It is. That's what my grandfather fought for. That's what my brother-in-law fought for. And everybody that puts that uniform on, and regardless of whether that uniform has them go overseas or if that uniform is having them here and in police or fire and doing the things that they're doing, fighting for protecting people every day. That's what it's all about, is that pursuit of happiness.
Love it. And you've had an interesting journey. We talked a little bit about that the other day as well. So your initial, let's say, goal was to, serve on, you lived in DC for a few years. So take us through that experience, kind of how you got to where you are today and from that point.
So I went there for my master's. And when they say DC is a different world, it's the truth. It really is a different world. And when you go what they call inside the Beltway, which is what they call the area in and around DC itself, which includes some outer counties of in Northern Virginia and some in Southern Maryland, it really is a world that's in and of itself. And that's all they're focused on is that. And nothing else really matters. And that you don't really appreciate what that is until you go there and you see it. And you live there for several years and see, wow, this is pretty self-absorbed, And in my education, I got to interact with a lot of people that were in that mode. Right. And that's why I was thinking about doing these things. And that changed as I was there. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't going to work out. And then I thought about doing some other things. So I interviewed with the CIA and went through that process and got to a certain point, and then they had to say no for a couple of different reasons, which involved my grandfather. Yeah. So that was a surprising component of that.
And you got pretty far into the interview process.
I did. I went through several rounds and had FBI agents show up at various friends' and families' houses asking questions.
It's pretty wild.
I got to meet an undercover agent, field agent, and had the whole conversation say, you can call me John, and then talk about all these things that he did. And it was like, so
were you not so sure about the CIA at that point?
Well, at that point I was like, because there were some very nice things that they did, that did very good things, and then there were some other things that you like, you know. And so I was actually being, you know, interviewed for a position where I was going to be providing analysis on intelligence that would be then used by the field rep agent to be able to do in the field.
I see.
So he was like, the stuff you give me is either going to help me live and be productive, or it's going to kill me.
Oh,
no pressure.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I
that
was
does
like,
make you say,
okay, I don't know about that part, but I mean, I was willing to keep going.
Yeah.
Until, you know, they came back and said, yeah, your grandfather is gonna, you can't do that.
Interesting. And so I get the sense from the way you just described DC that maybe the culture and like the mentality of people in the Beltway, as you say, was not necessarily one that you identified with. Is that?
That is exactly correct. Say? Yes. It's a bubble. It really is. It's a bubble, and it's a whole world into of itself. They lose track of what's going on outside of that beltway and outside the bubble. It's very easy to do.
You always hear people describe it like that, and you know, the elites on their pedestal, and you know, they don't understand what it's like in America for normal people. To quote Andrew Yang directly. But yeah, that's so interesting to hear from somebody who's actually lived there. And it's the whole ecosystem from what it sounds like. Right?
It is.
This is not just people in Congress.
No.
Nancy Pelosi or any others.
My university was directly across the street from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Okay. Oh. That's proximity. We were like 5 blocks down from the White House, literally. Right across the street from the State Department. So we had all these entities being able to supply students into the program that I was in. So I got to meet all of them. And yeah, their different organizations had different characteristics about them for sure.
Right.
But all of them were still very much focused on their world.
Yeah.
Because that's really what you're paid to do, is focus on that world and only that world.
Hey, you're a product of your environment at the end of the day.
Exactly. And your environment is this very hyper-focused, this is my area of focus, very siloed, and that's the way it is. And that's why it's easy for everybody to kind of lose track of what's going on outside of what's happening outside the Beltway.
Yeah. So what you do now, I would say, you know, from an outsider's perspective, and I'd love to talk about your current business and your journey there. That seems a lot more service oriented to me. That seems like something that, you know, you could really feel good about with those type of
Absolutely.
ideals.
Yes. Have a franchise where we are trying to find resources for older people. And the goal is to help them find the things they need in order to live their best life, period.
And so these are people, is there a particular type of resource you focus on? I know nursing homes was one of the major ones.
Yes. And that's one of the things that and that's one of the things that's kind of a misnomer, is that nursing homes are separate from assisted living facilities. So nursing homes are what people traditionally think is the place that you go to live and unfortunately die. Mm-hmm. But it's really about assisted living and getting help with the things that you need to do on a daily basis, and then being your best self in that environment because of that. So we help people find those opportunities in places that best fit their needs and wants. We also help them with legal opportunities if they need them for elder law. We help them with other aspects of real estate propositions or financial aspects. So If you want to get financial planning done so that you should secure your nest egg and make sure that you have it there for multiple years, we help them with people that specialize in those opportunities. I've even helped somebody find a dog walker. So,
So it
you
really
know,
is anything and everything. to help
anything and
the
everything
quality
that
of
would
life.
help them be able to live their best life is our goal and objective. And they don't pay us anything for it.
Oh, wow.
The partners that we partner with would compensate us after the fact if they end up partnering with them.
Referrals, basically.
Mhm.
Oh, that's terrific.
So we did that after we got out of the YMCA. And so pandemic got us, and that's what got us into that. But we were still servicing that population when we were when I was at the Y, especially.
And so you've done this now for 8 years or so?
So we were at the Y for 4, been doing this is going into our 3rd year. And then prior to that, I was working in a Medicare insurance company for over 10 years. So I've been working with the population now for almost 20 years, 65 plus.
Got it. And so take us back to that jump from potentially being 1 step away, 2 steps away from being in the CIA to getting into health insurance.
So I ended up not getting into the CIA.
Yeah.
So I had to find another job, and I ended up going to work for a marketing agency in DC.
Okay.
And I was doing some phone surveys and things like that for a direct marketing agency. Worked on some Philip Morris campaigns. So that was fun and interesting, to say the least, trying to convince people, oh, we don't need those smoking regulations,
What was Philip Morris? Who is Philip Morris? It's a company, correct?
It's the holding company for Marlboro and some of the biggest cigarette makers in the United States and the world.
Oh, wow.
So
you did a campaign for them.
Yes.
Interesting.
They were our client. So we did advocacy for them on telemarketing, basically trying to, when certain communities had these regulations coming up that were going to make it harder to smoke in public, for example, because this was in the 90s.
Right.
So that's when
the wheels are coming off for big tobacco.
Exactly. And that's when they were making their pushback, and we were kind of like the tip of the sword on the pushback for them to do that. So that got my feet wet in the marketing side of things.
And that makes sense. You knew DC, you knew regulations or
Yes.
regulators, the inner workings of that
and it kind of went with my degree. I mean, international marketing,
Right.
marketing. They were a multinational.
Makes sense.
Yeah, not really. But it's what I had, and I was just trying to make some money,
Sure.
to keep from going further into debt. And that's what I started with. And then I found another direct marketing agency that was outside of DC to go to work for. And that's when I really got into the nuts and bolts of doing some very cool marketing concepts and techniques, and did some other things. And that really is how I started getting in. Marketing is the doorway that got me into the healthcare thing.
Okay.
Because I ended up getting a marketing job at that Medicare insurance place from my previous marketing experiences.
Was the Medicare insurance place that you mentioned, so that was that a public company?
At the
Or
time,
public
it was not
entity?
public. Okay. But then when I was there, probably year 3, it went public.
I see.
And then got to be a pretty big player from a regional perspective. And then it got noticed by one of the biggest players, Cigna, and Cigna ended up purchasing it.
Got it. Okay. So what prompted you to start the company that you have now and get to where you are today? What made you make the jump?
It really was about, well, one, finding something to do during the pandemic, because we, had lost our jobs with the Y, and still being able to.
What were you doing for the Y?
So at that point, I was doing I managed and oversaw a lot of the programs, the insurance programs that helped with the older population. So there's programs that the health insurance companies have that give people 65 and older memberships at YMCAs for free as part of their health plan. And then it encourages them to come in and use the facility.
Preventative care, somewhat.
Health and wellness
Yeah.
in general. Come in and use the weight room, come in and attend actual classes called Silver Sneakers, for instance, where they learn and do various exercises to help them stay fit and healthy. But we encourage them to also access other aspects of the Y, because the Y is a health, mind, body. So it's a very holistic approach. So you want to try to keep everything healthy, not just the body.
Yeah.
So they engaged him in a lot of other things as well. And we just made sure that they had access to all the benefits that they could get.
I see. So that's a pretty natural transition then.
Yes, because we wanted to still be able to help the population because we saw lots of people that needed that help that were older. And when this opportunity came to our attention, it's like, hey, okay, that seems to flow very nicely into it.
I like it. I like it. So you're obviously, I'm sure, still very politically active. We talked a little bit about just health insurance in general in Texas and nationally. Is that a major hot button issue for you? And what else would be kind of in that list?
I mean, healthcare in general is a pretty hot button issue for me, because I've experienced both sides of the equation. I see it from where you are when you're older to getting to where you're older. And it's a very difficult journey to get there in our country for a variety of reasons. We're the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't have some sort of system where you don't get your insurance through employers universally. Okay. So that's a bit of a problem in some respects, that we've seen with a lot of uninsured people in this country because there's a lot of jobs that you don't get insurance from.
And what happens when you lose your job?
That's correct.
What happens if you're self-employed?
Exactly. And those are very, very expensive components that you have to look at from both sides of the equation when you're a business owner versus the person needing that coverage. And there's lots of decisions that you have to make that's pretty complicated, to be honest. And that's something that we've experienced as a new business owner, is seeing how complicated it really is to be able to find the coverage that you need, to be able to get there for what it's worth. That's one of the things that's kind of spurred on a lot of the things that's going on with me with that mindset moving forward, is we got to do a better job of being able to see the problem and address it.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that's been very enticing about Forward, is that it's all about doing that.
Finding the root cause.
Find the cause. Don't just be enamored with these ideological ways of looking at it. Look at the practical ways of looking at it.
Absolutely.
And say, let's fix it. There's no idea that's a bad idea. So we'll hear it, and then we can come to something that's going to fix it. And that's what I think a lot of the discussion is lacking these days, is that more practical component. And that's why I think Forward is so interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no question about that. We were talking earlier today about how just pretty much everything that comes out of these, congressmen, their mouths these days are just complete nonsense. These bills that they're putting up, or committees, and just various things going on in Congress, and what the media focuses on. None of it is practical. None of it is anything other than just, outrage material, or, ideological, digging your foot in, getting mad about, getting angry at the other guy.
Exactly. And I'm going to give you one of the best examples of a practical problem that's being completely ignored, that's very serious for this country. Okay. And it's in healthcare. And the problem is simple. We have a shortage of doctors and other healthcare providers, period. We see this every day in my business. A lot of these assisted living facilities, memory care places have a hard time being able to find the workers that have the expertise to come in and deliver the care that these individuals need.
I started my career in healthcare staffing, so I'm a little bit familiar with it, at least on the nursing side. Absolutely.
Yes, huge nursing shortage in this country, as it is. But now we have a significant physicians shortage in this country.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yes. The state of Texas has a severe shortage of physicians. There are 28 counties in this state that don't have any practicing physicians at all.
28.
28.
Those are obviously rural counties, I'm sure.
Probably, yes. And rural healthcare is a whole other subject for sure, with many counties not having hospitals at all anymore because the hospitals can't stay in existence in business because they can't make money anymore.
Yeah.
At all.
So why you just mentioned, finding the root cause. What's the problem? Why does this problem exist? In your estimation, I'm sure it's extremely complicated, but where is this coming from? Where's this shortage of doctors coming from first?
Well, the biggest issue is the fact that they're turning 65 and retiring. A lot of them are boomers. That's problem number one.
But don't we have, this still is the most predictable, or one of the most predictable routes to, being wealthy, right? Is becoming a doctor. Is there a decrease in the amount of students getting these degrees in America, or do we have these replacements coming up? Or?
There's hurdles. Remember, I said debt when I was going to school, and I needed to try to address debt. Well, medical school is very expensive.
And it takes a very long time.
And when you get out of medical school, you start by going into residency. So you're working 90 hours a week and getting paid not a lot of dollars for it.
Sure.
And then on top of that, your debt starts having to be payable immediately because you're working now. You're technically still learning, but you are working. So the system that we have is penalizing.
Not to cut you off, they're considering residency to be working?
Yes, because you're working for a hospital. You're in a residency program. You're getting a salary. So often, many of these loans start having to becoming due and paid. And you have to start paying them at that point. So you still have several years before you're making those top dollars to make it a lot easier that you have to live through.
Right.
Okay.
And then where does all that money go? It goes
exactly.
to paying back the debt.
Paying back the debt. So on top of that, you combine it with all the other aspects of medicine that are complicated. Depending on the state, you could have malpractice insurance rates that are extremely high.
Yeah.
Now, that fortunately is not necessarily the case here in Texas because we've had some tort reform and things like that. But that's also something that you have to do is there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be built if you're going to be starting a practice from scratch. That's not inexpensive. Or if you're going to go work for someone, then you're not maximizing your full benefit for your degree when you're getting paid basically a salary in a practice as just one of the staff members of a practice.
Yeah, numbers don't add up.
Numbers don't add up is the bottom line. You combine that with the continuing aging of the population. It's not just the boomers. Right now, this year, 45% of all physicians are aged 55 and older. So in the next 10 years, those physicians are going to be retiring.
That's not good.
So the shortages that we have now are only going to get worse as we continue. The estimates here in Texas are that you basically have to have 13 to 60 additional residents added into across the medical school arena program to just keep up with the shortage that's currently in place.
This is the first I've even heard this, and I'd like to consider myself relatively politically active. I pay attention to the news to the best I can, and read about these topics, but you don't hear people talking about that.
No.
That seems like a big problem.
It's a big problem. It's a huge problem. And then you get into specific specialties. Geriatrics, it's even worse. Okay? The projection is that we are going to need 75% more geriatricians in the next 5 years than what we currently have now because a lot of them are going to be retiring and leaving. Geriatricians are doctors that specialize only in treating people 65 and older. So right when we have our aging population, okay, we're going to have fewer doctors that are going to be able to treat them that specialize just in what they are dealing with. Okay.
Oh man.
Gynecologists in the state of Texas. We have like 250 plus counties, right? 147 of them don't have a single gynecologist in them. 147. And there's another 80 counties that only have up to five or fewer. One county that's just north of where we live has one. That's it. And they had to talk him into staying around because he was about to retire. Okay. So why is this a big deal? It's a big deal for women's health because a lot of times lower income women, their doctor, their primary care physician is that gynecologist.
Well, yeah. Who else is it going to be if they
Right.
don't have one in their county?
So it's the gynecologist because they don't get time off that's paid. They're hourly. So then when they go and see the doctor, they want to get everything done at once,
Sure.
which includes all of the women exams, wellness exams that has to happen. And in order for that to happen, the expert in that field is a gynecologist. Yes, you could go to a general practice doctor and get pap smears and all these types of things, mammograms and those types of things. But the gynecologist is really trained and focused on being able to help women deal with what's specific to them.
Yeah.
And we have 147 counties in Texas where women don't have access to that expert, and another 80 that only have 5 or fewer. So moving forward, that's going to be a serious problem because a lot of them are going to be retiring as well and maybe leaving the field because of recent changes in our legal system that makes it harder for them to do their jobs.
Well, there's a whole nother layer to that.
There is. And this is something that you don't see being talked about at all out there, is these healthcare deficits that are out there and happening right now, but only going to get worse in the next 10 years because of the demographic trends.
Well, it's just a perfect example of us not talking about the real problems.
Exactly.
Talking about the, the argument of the day around, it's thinking back to the whole fight over Obamacare.
Yes.
I mean, it seems I use healthcare.gov. I'm a self-employed. That's where I get my health insurance.
So do I. Congratulations.
Yeah. It works. It works pretty well.
It does.
I don't know what I would do if that didn't exist.
Correct.
And that's, that seems like a very basic thing.
Yes.
And we're having fights over the kind of the bare minimum as opposed to, creating a sustainable solution.
Correct. And did you know that as part of that, this federal government has made more money available that would help more people access healthcare.gov through the Medicaid program?
So tell me a little bit more about that. So that's specific to Texas is what you're referring to?
Across the country, people can do what the federal government's done is made money available through Medicaid for the states to access. It's basically getting your state's tax dollars back and expanding Medicaid to be able to help people be able to access healthcare.gov and have more access to Obamacare type plans.
Sure. So each state is basically allocated a certain amount of money based on the census or something
like that.
Okay.
Yes. So it's that, and it's your option. You can ask for the money and you get it. There's 18 states that are not getting that money from the federal government.
And this would be for individuals who just can't afford health
Correct.
insurance otherwise,
They're uninsured.
Yeah.
And Texas is one of those states. Texas is one of the 18 states that is not getting the Medicaid dollars to be able to expand and cover the amount of people that are not uninsured with Obamacare, which is what the program is designed for. Kentucky is doing it. Iowa, Ohio, Arizona, Alaska, not bastions of liberalism for sure.
Sure. I mean, these are red states.
These are red states that are taking the money.
Why would you not
using it.
take the money?
Exactly.
What is the practical reason that Texas or these other states wouldn't want to use this?
It's ideological. It's ideological. It's all about the fact that this is Obamacare and you can't do that. Not here. You can't do that.
It's crazy.
It is crazy because it's literally because all our federal
We're already paying for
lawmakers, yes, we are paying for it. And they talk about how they want to make sure that our tax dollars are coming back into Texas to help benefit Texans. And they have one of the biggest opportunities to do that. And our senators and our congresspeople are saying no. And we also are one of the biggest uninsured states in the United States.
Hmm.
The bottom 5 of people that still don't have health insurance.
And obviously that plays into who is bearing the brunt of these costs. I bet that plays into these rural hospitals shutting down, right?
Exactly. That's because a lot of people that on a per capita basis, more Medicaid dollars go into rural areas than they do into the urban areas. Okay?
Sure.
For a variety of reasons. And when you don't have that capability being there, a lot of hospitals get a lot of dollars from Medicaid and Medicare. And when you eliminate that, that's one of the big issues that they have in those environments, is being able to offset that loss. I mean, it's a big problem as it is, because when you have someone uninsured and they show up at a hospital, because that's the only place they can go to is an emergency room,
right, to
get health care. So they show up at the ER. That hospital still has to somehow pay for that treatment. Okay. So the estimate that I saw from the Kaiser Family Foundation was that hospitals estimate they may get 1 penny out of every dollar they spend on uninsured people. 1 penny. Okay. So 99 cents is still out there that they have to recoup. They have to stay in business. Where are they going to get that extra 99 cents? They get it from you and me. Because they're going to say, hey, Brian's got that cool Obamacare health insurance plan. So why don't we go ahead and raise his premiums that we charge that health insurance company 30 cents. And then we'll raise Brent's another 30 cents. And that way we start recouping our 99 cents. So we, the American taxpayers, are still paying for the uninsured that are not paying for it, because we're paying for higher health insurance costs, higher medical health care costs in general, because you have all these people that don't have insurance to be able to pay for their expenses.
And I think that if it's explained that way, it's hard. I would imagine it's hard to find someone who would say, well, that seems like a bad idea, right? So I don't want to pay more for my health insurance, even if you hate Obama and didn't like the idea of government, running healthcare, which I actually kind of agree with that idea. Is like, the post office is always a nightmare when I go in there. No disrespect to postal workers at all, but the DMV we'll say the DMV is one of the ones that's more, you think of when you think of a mess when you go in there. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't want the DMV people running, my healthcare. Is that, I think that's a reasonable kind of argument.
I think that is a reasonable argument, and it begs the bigger question. And that is, what is the role of government really? Mm-hmm. What is it really truly about? Okay? Because in general, can you make the case that government is about government? Yes, you can. I mean, I lived in Washington, D.C. I can tell you that the bureaucracy in D.C. is all about the bureaucracy in D.C.
Sure.
Because that's what it's self-preservation.
And when you say government, what do you mean by that?
The federal government.
Government's about government as in passing laws, or just their own self-interest?
It's yes to both, because you got to pass laws that are going to help maintain what your self-interest is, which is your existence.
Right.
Okay. So you have to be able to justify your existence. So yes, there is some definite problems with how government perceives itself and how it operates. Who's ultimately to blame for that? We are. Okay? We're in a democracy. Government of the people, by the people, for the people. If we were doing our jobs, then we would not have allowed this to happen. If we were paying attention to what's actually going on in Washington, Austin, or your county government seat or wherever, then all of this self-interest preservation stuff would not be happening.
Interesting.
So if we did that, and we actually held people accountable for doing things, government will immediately change, because we actually are holding them accountable to what's actually going on. And then by having a better, more efficient government, maybe we wouldn't be as scared to have the DMV running healthcare, because it wouldn't be the DMV running healthcare. It would actually be someone that is knowledgeable and wanting to do what is best for us instead of themselves.
Sure. Well, it's certainly very complicated, and when I think about what we're doing with the Forward Party, as the Forward Party, that is kind of the point, right?
Yes.
It's holding government accountable to providing us with just two bad options.
Correct. And actually fixing something.
Mm-hmm. Doing their job.
Doing your job. It's broke. Fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't talk about fixing it. Don't demagogue it. Don't keep it broken so that then we have something to be elected on 4 years from now, which you can go through a list of different issues of that happening across everything.
That's the crazy one to me. And I think that's one that you can find on almost any issue that you care about, is either party running on an issue, getting let's say the border, immigration,
yes,
say healthcare, abortion, being in power, having an opportunity to address the thing that they campaign on and failing to do it because it's a very good campaign issue to rile up people and get them out to the polls.
And I think that's one of the things that's been lacking, and it has contributed to this issue, is the fact that we aren't honest with ourselves. We always try to say, okay, it's going to be easy to fix. Yeah, it's going to be easy. We can just fix it easy. That's not the case in a lot of different aspects.
Yeah.
A lot of these things are going to require some very complex solutions.
No question.
To be able to address. Okay? I mean, you just have to look at gun control, or gun ownership is how everybody's now trying to refer to it, as gun ownership. There's all kinds of different layers to this to try to address it moving forward. Mental health, the constitutionality,
mm-hmm.
how they're used, how they're protected, all these things. And they all kind of are layered on top of each other that also impact each other in some different ways, shapes, and forms. And there's lots of complex issues that do that. So the first things that we have to do is to be honest with people and say, look, this is not going to be easy. Okay?
That's not going to win elections, Brent.
But see, that's part of the conversation I think that's important to have with people, mm-hmm. is to get them to understand that it's not about winning elections, it's about fixing problems.
Yeah.
It's about serving people to give them their best life possible so that they can have that pursuit of happiness. That's what it's about. It's not about winning elections. It's about that pursuit of happiness that's not being enabled right now because we don't have a functioning system to motivate people and embolden people to do that.
Yeah, there's no incentives for them to do that. Their incentives are set up in a way to do what they do now, which
exactly.
is, we've been over it. We know.
I mean, we're beating the dead horse,
yes.
But I think we have to change the discourse in this country to be more honest and direct and say, look, this is not going to be easy, but we have to do it. Okay? Like everybody's scared to death at touching Social Security and Medicare. Here's a simple fact. Of our $6.4 trillion federal budget, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid make up over $4 trillion of that budget.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you literally could cut everything out of defense, education, treasury, and everything else, and that would mean you would have $600 billion left to spend on all those things in order to eliminate the current deficit.
That's something that Bill King provided a similar stat earlier today, and I could not believe that. I thought it was going to be such a smaller percentage. That is just wild.
It is.
That speaks to just like, do you think it's obviously some degree of inefficiency? We have 18 states not using Medicaid money.
Yes.
That's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, but we're not saying we cut these things, okay? We're saying we have to talk about them.
We have to talk about them.
Okay? The Medicare Trust Fund for hospitals is going to run out of money in 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens after that? How do the hospitals are going to get paid from Medicare if it has no money left? It has to come out of the federal direct budget.
Yeah.
And the estimate is that they would have to cut that payment by 75 down to 75% of what they were typically getting. Now, are hospitals going to be able to be happy and staying in business with getting 75% instead of 75 cents instead of their dollar?
I would say probably not.
Probably not. And they would have right to be. The Social Security Trust Fund will run out of money in 2035. So that's basically 10 years, 15 years from now, 12 years exactly. After that, the benefit will have to be reduced to 85% of what it is now. So if we don't do anything, we're still going to have to cut the programs eventually. So that's not a conversation people are having. They're not being honest with what the American people are actually going to be living through in the next decade. And we have to have the conversation because these programs need to be preserved. That's the point.
Absolutely.
We have to preserve them.
No choice.
No choice. So we have to have that net, the social net. Then what is that going to look like moving forward? We have to talk about it. We have to try to have that discussion and see what's the best way for making this happen.
Man. And it's just that idea of austerity, right? Which is tightening the belt, so to speak. And that's not a political winner. And maybe that's a gap that the Forward Party can fill is, providing this in a honest, providing this information, having this conversation in an honest way.
Exactly. And the honest way is simply by providing the facts. Okay. You don't hear that at all. Facts, what are, and then we have, the sky's not blue, it's purple because I say it's purple. Okay. That's what you have some people doing and living is that life.
Well, we have to prop up the fact checking industry, Brent. There's a lot of really good people in that industry.
There are. Exactly. And we got to do more of that.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the intriguing things about the Forward Party is that it's about facts and it's about solving problems.
Absolutely.
And not coming in with preconceived notions of, okay, well, this is going to be the way to do it. But it's like, hey, we want to listen to people and then we're going to say, hey, let's talk through how we can fix this. Okay. Let's talk about how we can get more doctors out there and helping people.
Absolutely.
For example, let's talk about how we can extend the life of Social Security. We have to have these conversations and we are willing to do that. And maybe if we start having those conversations, we can start then forcing the other parties to say, okay, maybe it's not such a good idea for me to just be focused on all these other BS things. It's about, let's talk about what we need to talk about.
And they can get away with it because no one else is talking about it.
Correct. No one is holding them accountable. No one is talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that's very intriguing about the Forward Party is that we're going to talk about it.
Love it. Love it. And I love that idea of personal responsibility that you mentioned as well, where I can't say I 100% agree with it, but that's a hot take. You said, whose fault is it that we're in this mess? Yours, mine, the American people. I mean, that's a hot take, but I like it.
We're the boss.
Yeah. That's the way it should be, at least.
If something's not happening the way that we want it to happen, ultimately it's our responsibility for allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
And it's just that simple. And, with my 3 kids, I've asked them, I straight up asked them, I said, what do you need to know in order for you to get more involved with stuff? And they're like, well, I just need to know that I'm going to make a difference. Okay, so what? You aren't making a difference when you go and vote? Well, no, because my vote really doesn't matter. And I was like, okay, so what has to happen? And I need to know that you hear my voice and my voice is going to make a difference. It will matter. It will change something. So that's the kind of the point is that if we don't use the voice and tell government at all levels that this is not acceptable anymore, your behavior is not acceptable anymore, then whose responsibility is it for the government to keep doing what it's been doing? If you don't use the voice you're not heard.
Who else can you blame?
Right.
If you're sitting there passively, not doing anything about it when you have the ability to do something about it.
That's right.
Even if it's just a little bit, even if it's just speaking out, even if it's just paying attention a little bit more.
Paying attention, informing yourself about actually what's going on.
Looking in the mirror, having that honest
Look
conversation.
in the mirror and have the honest conversation and say, hey, look, it's not fun. It's not easy, but this is where we are. And I think that's what we're missing is that honest conversation with ourselves and everyone else. And then being willing to listen. It's fine to agree to disagree. It's what we used to do all the time. It's like, yeah, I hear you, but I don't agree with that. But it's okay. I still like you.
Yeah.
Because ultimately we're all Americans. We all believe in red, white, and blue and everything else. We do. That's why we're here. So then why not just agree to disagree instead of saying that you're the mortal enemy of everything that's holy and dear, which is what everyone seems to be doing.
Yeah, it's a crazy
in both parties
thing.
On the extremes.
And there's such an appetite for it. I think there's just no doubt about that people are sick of it. People are sick of that negativity, demonization.
I think there's an appetite now for the fact.
Yeah.
I think there's an appetite now for the honesty. And I think, most importantly, there's an appetite now for fixing things. I want to fix it. I want to fix my roads. I want to fix my power structure. I want to fix everything that's out there that's broken because I'm tired of it being broken.
I love it. So Brent, how are you? What's your next step? How do you plan to get? What are you doing in the Forward Party now? How do you plan to get more involved? What does that, look like in your mind?
Well, I'm helping a lot with, on the communication team as however is needed. I'm going to be focused a lot on the Montgomery County component because that's where we live, and look forward to working with the leadership there to try to get more people involved, reaching out to them, calling them, saying, "Hey, what's up? Let's talk and let's do some stuff," and making things happen. Try to get organized, have some precincts going, precinct chairs and all that type of stuff. And hopefully reaching out to those Gen Zers and millennials that don't think that they matter and their voices don't matter and say, hey, look, here's an opportunity for you to actually matter more than you've ever thought possible. Here's a new opportunity for you to listen to what's being said, but most importantly, be listened to.
Yes.
And be heard so that you can make a difference moving forward in what's going on in your world so that you can make that difference right now at your age.
Yeah, you said something during our one of our communications teams meeting. You were helping with some of our marketing efforts, and you'd said that young people, they just want to be heard. Mm-hmm. It's that they just want, and this is a theme I hear a lot from all different demographics of people who are drawn to this movement. It's just they want to be heard. They want their voice to matter, and that's it.
That's it. Yes, they want honesty. They want to have the voice, and then they want to, to be heard as well within that voice and help produce what the outer voice is going to turn into. That's actually going to make that difference in the world. They're very, very engaged, much more engaged than I was, at their ages. And I think that's the most important aspect of this is that
that's
I think
step one, right? It's giving,
right. Caring. And they do care a lot. And I think that's what we're short selling them on, is that we think that because they're not participating, that they're not engaged, but they are. They're much more engaged than we ever could imagine. And they have lots of deep held thoughts and beliefs on how things should matter and proceed. And I think it's a wealth of opportunity for us to be able to engage them because ultimately speaking, I think they're the key for us to be able to move the country forward.
No
because
question.
They have the mindset that we want to fix things and that's all we care about is fixing it.
And they haven't been disillusioned by the world.
Correct.
They're not jaded.
Yes. And I'm slowly shaking off the jade off of me because I believe now that it's important for us to say, look, just because it's this way, it doesn't mean it has to be this way.
Bring that positivity back.
You have to be positive and understand that as long as you're able to have a voice, it can always be heard, period. And you just have to be willing to use that voice to make something positive happen.
I think that's a great place to end it.
Excellent.
I love it. Brent, it's been fun. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of fun.
Night, everybody. But before we wrap up here, we have one more segment for you, Brent. It's our rapid fire questions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Are you ready?
I think I'm ready.
Is the jade sufficiently shaken off?
It's shaken off as much as I can make it.
All right, here we go. Favorite thing about Texas?
The independent nature and the caring part of it.
Favorite book or movie that you would recommend to people right now?
Saving Private Ryan.
It's a good one. If you could live in any other state.
Wow. I think that would be Wisconsin.
Great cheese there, huh?
Yes.
I love Wisconsin.
I mean, being a cheesehead, that's important.
Definitely. Are you a Packers fan?
You know, not as much as my wife.
Really?
Like, she really adores the Packers.
I love the Packers. I'm a lifelong fan of the Packers.
But not so much. They're like top 3, 4 teams.
All right, I'll take that. You a cat or a dog person?
Dog.
Nice. One word that describes what attracted you to the Forward Party.
Change.
And if there's one thing you could change or one issue that you want to really make a difference in, what would that be?
Healthcare.
Beautiful.